Good. We're on to our fourth question, which has come from the audience tonight. Thank you for submitting questions. This is from Lucy and is regarding one of the most tragic elements of the COVID pandemic. Lucy asks, the denial of designated visitors to care home residents has been a tragedy, and many residents have died in the last year without seeing loved ones, with their deterioration accelerated by feeling abandoned. What would you do to support increased visiting? And I'm going to ask Daniel to kick us off on this one. Oh, Daniel, sorry, you're muted. Just make us
apologies. Start. I've done so well so far as well on the mute button. Look, yeah, there is no doubt that care homes have borne the most brutal and cruel brunt of this virus. I think it's 45% of all deaths have occurred within care homes in Scotland from COVID. If that number is wrong, it's just very high. And there's no doubt that the isolation that has been imposed and understandably and rightly has exacerbated, I think, the situation. But I think there are things, especially with the vaccine programme, continuing as more and more of us have the vaccine. And I know that the issue of vaccine passports is very controversial, but I think when you can prove that you have been vaccinated, I think that opens up possibility. But even before that point, I think there are protocols that could be put in place, but potentially visits on the other side window. But this is something that we need to urgently look at, because there's no doubt that the isolation exacerbates what's already, a pretty unbearable situation.
Thank you, Daniel. Angus, your thoughts on this issue?
Well, this is extremely close to my heart. My father is in a care home. He's been in a care home throughout the lockdown, and I have, as have other children of people in care homes, have been wrestling with the difficulty of sometimes being able to see him, other times not, and also acknowledging how, for some, especially depending on the state of mind, how exceptionally frightening and difficult a time it has been for older people in care homes. It should go without saying, but I'd like to say it. I mean, the care, the love of the care home staff has been remarkable, and I totally understand the questioner raising the issue of how can we accelerate opening of and access to care homes. I think given the experience that we've had, however, with care homes, this is just one of those areas where it's an exceptionally difficult balancing act for our health professionals and scientific advisors to make sure that we're keeping our loved ones safe by not letting people in who might bring the disease in. But as Daniel rightly says, I think the advance of the vaccination process should speed all of this up. I can't wait to go back more often. I know that other people can't wait too. I want it to happen as quickly and as safely as is possible, and I'm sure that the people who are called upon to make those decisions on the basis of the scientific advice are bearing in mind the wishes of loved ones who want to see their parents, their loved ones, as quickly as possible. I know I do.
Thank you very much, Angus. Miles, your thoughts?
Thank you, and thanks, Lucy, for that question. This is one of, I think, the hardest issues which I've had within my mailbag as an MSP over the last year of this pandemic. I've tried as an MSP to lobby care homes and also the health board to do all we can to provide visiting opportunities. Now, I welcome that we've seen designated 2 people now put in place so that we can see 2 visitors able to visit their loved ones, but we need to actually see beyond this a change in regulations, and I think all parties now want to see clinical standards put in place for all our care home sector, because we're seeing different care providers doing different things, and that's created a real postcode lottery, not only here in Edinburgh but across Scotland. As a member of the Health and Sport Committee, Alison Johnson and I undertook a report into the care sector, and one of the key things was actually about how families weren't included in the care decisions of their loved ones in care homes, and I think that has to change. And I think the talk which we're seeing from all parties around a national care service is probably the way we can take forward formalised ways of improving this. But above all, we have to also, as soon as possible, get a public inquiry up and running to learn the lessons of this. And that's not just in Scotland, that's across the UK.
Thank you, Miles. Alison.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously an absolutely heartbreaking situation for so many people. And, you know, you can only imagine the frustration of someone who perhaps has been an unpaid carer for years of a loved one who is subsequently being looked after in a care home. So very often we're depriving those who have a real input into the care of that individual from seeing them, and it has a devastating impact both on the person in the care home and the person out with. Now, the Scottish Greens support the National Care Service. You know, I'm very much looking forward to discussions on what that's going to look like in this session of the Parliament. And, you know, very much as Miles is saying, different care homes do different things at different times, and it will be heartening to have the highest national standards across the board. And we know that great work goes on in many care homes, and we know that some of this reluctance has been because, yeah, people are just very, very concerned because, you know, COVID has had a devastating impact across the UK, absolutely devastating. We've had one of the highest death rates on the globe. So it's no wonder that we take this very seriously. But what I'd just like to, you know, we have to remember that care homes are people's homes. You know, they are where people live, and you would like to think that you could have a visitor, and we've got to do everything we can for that to become possible. Obviously vaccination, yes, but we know now what PPE is appropriate, and we can make sure that that is in place. But I do think for future learning, you know, perhaps having a designated visitor from the word go, and making every effort to make sure that person has access to vaccination, has access to PPE in a way that a staff member can't be beyond our ability. Because what I really want to say here is we need a human rights based care system that makes sure the rights of all concerned are taken on board.
Thank you, Alison. Finally, Fred, how would you address this situation?
Yeah, I think I agree with almost everything that's been said so far, but I think one of the things that struck me is that the care home management and staff must have been particularly scunnered by the horrific experiences of last summer, and you can well understand how their response to the second wave was to be extremely risk averse. And if we all, I don't have relatives in care home, but I've read every time there's been a possibility of the rules relaxing, the excitement amongst people who do. And I think it does illustrate the need for national standards, but it also illustrates the need for the health boards to treat care homes as part of their system and not as some extra side thing. And this failure to integrate with health, which is part of the thing I think the public inquiry has to look into, this failure to realise that it's important, has had this ongoing consequence. Because I wouldn't be surprised if we're still here in the autumn worrying about a third wave. And therefore, we have to build confidence amongst healthcare staff and residents and owners of care homes of all types that the health board's got their back, because otherwise they'll continue to act in a risk-averse way and this problem won't get solved.
Thank you, and thank you again to Lucy for the question.